Okay, there we are. Yeah, look at that. Just a few issues there. I'll just turn the music down. There we go. Yeah, so hey everyone, welcome. Hope everybody's doing well. I know 'tis the season to be rushing around and doing lots. Yeah, 'tis the season. Exactly that. Today I thought because it's the season and everybody's rushing around, myself included, it was a pretty busy day for me, that, well, what we do is just a short talk on safety data and, of course, a Q&A, talk a little bit about Christmas and what's coming up. And yeah, so for those of you that are able to join, great. For those of you that join afterwards, you know what? I look forward to hearing from you, your comments, etc. I also particularly enjoy when you reach out on other videos and have comments. So please keep them coming. I appreciate them. It's where I get some of the Q&As for some of what we talk about. And it also helps me because I get to see a more of a snapshot than just my own perception of health and safety across Canada and across the world. So by all means, please keep them coming. So yeah, tonight, like I said, we'll just talk a little bit about safety data. One of the viewers, Dave, you know who you are, asked me about safety data, and I wasn't sure how much we want to dive into it. So of course, you and your comments, leave a comment, let me know how much we want to dive into it, and do we need to look at a series of live streams and how safety data is, and maybe how it works along with building the safety culture. So there we go. Just a few things. But anyway, let's get on and start talking about the chat rules. And of course, introduce yourself. If you're online and on right now, by all means, please introduce yourself. Let me know who you are, where you're from, etc. And even if you want to talk a bit about your safety background in the chat, by all means. I realize typing is a little bit arduous, but yeah, it just helps me to know who the audience is. The other thing is, my opinion is not the only one. I found that out. It was crushing. I was about 10. And so I've built on that since, is that everybody has an opinion and everybody has something to offer and contribute. So by all means, ask, answer questions, pop your opinions in the chat or in the comments, either or. I appreciate them. Now, on that note, when you're working with the chat, be civil. No name calling, no insults. Fortunately, I've only ever had it happen once. But in the same token, hey, good day, Dan. Well, it's evening here, but good day for you, buddy. No matter what, we want to be civil, and we always want to understand that people are asking questions because they want to know an answer. A long time ago, I used to have the opinion that there's no such thing as a stupid question, of course, and there's stupid people that ask questions. And I was young and brash, and I've since revised that into there's everybody seeking an answer. So that's why they're asking a question. And then finally, of course, understand that this is not professional advice. This by no means professional advice. There's no contracts being signed, no money changing hands, no agreements, handshakes, anything like that. It's an effort to collaborate, form a community, which is pretty much why I wanted to start this channel. I had lunch today with a really good friend, colleague, someone who I consider extremely wise. And he told me today that he likes the idea of himself being able to make a difference, make a change, make a contribution, but do it anonymously. And wow, is that ever the epitome of humility? I just thought I'd leave that and something to think about. Anyway, what's new? Well, safety data in the news. So what I'm going to do is, and I hope I didn't lose the browser. I'm just going to have a quick look. There we go. The odd flash of the screen. I'm going to bring up the browser so we can have a look. And here's one of them. And this is where data makes a difference. But once again, we have to make sure that the data is credible, manageable, and has context. Okay? But there's a couple of scary things. A third of workplace injuries occur during an employee's first year in the job. And it's usually driven by strains from exertion. And so if we look at the article here, it goes through and it talks about, and especially timely because holiday shopping, and it does focus on both retail and manufacturing. So two, where the highest demands are during this time of year. But the funny thing is it showed that a third of workplace injuries, 34%, occurred during an employee's first year on the job. Look at that. So now we have correlation plus the amount, but always remember, correlation is not causation, but correlation should always give you pause for thought and looking at context. And these are restaurants, construction, transportation injuries, which are most affected and also by this time of year. The first year injuries account for a third of all workers' compensation costs. Okay. One of the questions, and I'll talk about it in a bit, that I asked in a recent survey about causes of injury, and part of it was worker training. Now, more than 1.2 million workers' compensation claims were submitted between 2016 and 2020, with data on lost time claims from those years. And this is, of course, like we're looking at like Canada-wide. Now, the most common cause for the injury is workplace overexertion, 29%, followed by slips, trips, falls, which is nothing surprising. And overexertion, of course, leads to strains, sprains, and MSIs. Now, such injuries occurred for 1/3 of the incidents in manufacturing, 30% or 36% in wholesale injuries. And then slips, trips, and falls ranked second. Incidentally, the same colleague I was having lunch with, we were talking about it, and his sector is totally different than anything I work in. And I said, as far as safety goes, it really doesn't matter what industry you work on. Top three are usually, we have overexertion, slips, trips, and falls, and then fall from differing heights. And usually violence is number 4. And you can take and interchange those, but usually those are going to be the top 4. And struck against and all of those things start to fit in there. But realistically, as far as it goes, doesn't matter whether you work in oil and gas, construction, whatever the case may be, no matter what, where it might seem somewhat benign, but overexertion leading to musculoskeletal injuries and disorders, and then slips, trips, and falls still are usually number 1 and 2 across the board. Okay? So when you're thinking of risk, don't necessarily think of consequence. That's the error that people make. Think about the risk of that time loss injury and what's the probability. Slips, trips, and falls kept workers out of work an average of 83 days, while those involved in motor vehicle accidents were away from work an average of 79 days. So understanding this is that we see, and we can look at this and see that new workers on the job, and we'll talk more about that data in a bit, but there could be all sorts of different factors. What was their onboarding like? What did it look like? And that could be equated to new worker training. Also, what was their observation? What was their supervision like? Was it just, oh, here's your hard hat, off you go? What was the monitoring like? And of course, by and large, what were the hazard assessments and job expectations like as a result? Now, something else, and he seems to be everybody's favorite person to pick on, but SpaceX worker injuries rise as Elon Musk accelerates his Mars mission. Now, the Reuters investigation discovered over 600 undisclosed workplace injuries. Once again here, folks, remember, context is everything. Workplace injury is simply an injury that occurred on the job. Doesn't talk about necessarily severity. It talks about workplace injuries, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So as we scroll down, the report documented over 600 previously undisclosed workplace injuries at SpaceX since 2014. So Reuters examined injury logs and public records from the company's six biggest facilities. And SpaceX had not recorded much of the injury in violation of regulatory standards. Now, of course, this is OSHA standards and so forth in the United States. But Among the injuries, so here's why I say context is everything. 100 workers experience cuts or lacerations. Doesn't say how bad they are. However, now we get into some of the better ones. Broke or dislocated bones, and 17 had their hands or fingers crushed, and 9 had some form of serious head injury. But once again, when you're putting that data together, and we have to remember, we as safety professionals, when we're putting that data together, we want to tell an accurate picture because we want to work on prevention and we want to work in creating programs that are going to lend to that prevention and help with that prevention. We want to further our safety management system. News agencies and media agencies, on the other hand, well, their job is sell advertising, basically. More people viewing, more people subscribing. Yeah, there we go. So we have to understand that there's more to it than what we think here. The big points here are that there's more important consideration and context. I won't keep you in suspense, but we're going to talk more about this and more about your safety data as we move along. So something else, I'm still working on the hazard assessment series, and it's going to be right from what is a hazard all the way to how to conduct them in your workplace, depending on what your workplace is, and conduct that hazard assessment. And so I've been really, and if anybody wants to reach out and give me a suggestion, I dislike the term master class. I really do. It sounds pretentious on my part and arrogant, and I don't like it. So if somebody would just, what do you think? Just an e-learning course or whatever, like some of my previous ones? What should I call it? Because I want to live stream it, and the plan is live stream it and then cut out all of the hollow bits and just put it as a Coles Notes video for others that don't want to watch the whole live stream. So I don't know what to call it. And if you want to comment, I'd appreciate it. So there we go. Now, something else, since we're talking about this, did a video, and it's on safety document management. And if you want, give me a comment, let me know, and I will leave the URL, because I don't think, I'll try to post it in the chat right now, but I don't think I can. I'm going to try. So just give me a second. I think I've locked out the chat even from me from posting URLs. But let's see. No lack of trying. Good or safety class. I love that, Dan. Thank you. Kind of don't know that it will catch on, but yeah. So let's see. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It didn't get robbed off. So there you go. There's the link, and it's just to talk about some best practices with document management. Now, there's still lots of organizations that are manage everything via paper. And whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. Of course, going electronically helps you to scrape and scrub more for data and look around and collect data easier. But whatever the case may be, it really doesn't matter if it's on paper or on silicon chips. It really doesn't matter, because data is data. It's collecting it and how you manage it and what you do with it. And that's what we're going to talk about as we move along. Okay. So once again, coming up, as I said, somewhere towards January, February, I'm going to have someone from the heavy construction industry going to talk. I'm still looking for a conflict resolution person. I had an idea and it didn't work out. So still looking at that. And some other ideas I have and some other things that I'm working on in the future. Police officer, either ex, or I've got a couple on the go, either ex-police officers or current police officers, and how you might interface with them in Canada, that is. Dan, it might not apply for you, but during, say, something like a fatal workplace accident or whatever the case may be. And then also I want to see if I can work on a data management expert, a person who his whole career has been built on managing injury and workplace data, and see if I could get him on and talk about that as well, especially how it pertains to safety culture. Now, the next thing, I did a poll recently on Friday, a week ago, and I wanted to ask, and I did ask the question, what do you think is the biggest contributor to workplace incidents? And so I had a few thoughts, like hazard assessments not being done, inadequate worker training, inadequate worker supervision, which we just talked about, workers not practicing situational awareness. In other words, being aware of their surroundings and looking for hazards. Now, a lot of people answered, and you see 54% said inadequate worker training. 21% workers not practicing situational awareness. Third place came in as hazard assessments not being done. And finally, inadequate worker supervision. Now, this may come as a very bad blow, but guess what? They're all huge contributors. And I don't know that any one of them is more right. And to be honest, I don't know how I would answer the question. It would likely depend on what has been happening in my world at that time. Okay? But if you look at it, one of the things I asked is, what do you think? And so what I asked basically is for your opinion. And now, and quite honestly, as far as a safety professional goes, that can be a seriously loaded and dangerous question to ask a safety professional, mostly because we can be our own worst enemy when we allow our opinion to creep into the mix. We allow our own confirmation bias, our own anchoring bias, or all of that, cognitive bias, all of it creeping into the situation. We all have biases. We're human, and that's going to happen. So maybe if I had researched it or thought about it, I might want to rephrase the question, and I did it on purpose the way I did, is if the question got asked to you, you might want to rephrase it and say, hold on, I will look at the research and tell you based on the research. And that's basically it. Like, the idea is we got to look at data. And like I said, I did that recent poll. I didn't ask according to research. Now, the moment we delve into statistics, though, we start battling our own biases. And often we let those cloud our judgment, whether it be anchoring bias, thinking we know the answer right from the get-go, and not allowing anything else to creep into our brains at all. Or it might be confirmation bias, where it might creep into that, where we have that idea, we know about it, so we're only going to collect and interpret the data that's going to confirm our own opinion. So we need to check our biases at the door and then pick them up on the way out, because we will. We're human. That's what we do. But according to research, and it's according to credible research, according to the statistics and how you interpret them, and we'll get more onto that too. But what you need to do is, when you're looking at your reports and you're going through them, you've likely heard the saying, garbage in, garbage out. So, and I've seen it lots before, worker wasn't being careful enough. Okay, right. How do you treat that objectively? That's being careful enough based on what? Being careful enough compared to what? How do you gauge that? On a scale of 1 to 10, how not careful was he being? It becomes, well, I don't know. It just creates garbage. So the importance of drilling down and asking why, even 5 times. Sometimes we even want to avoid the answer, regardless of the reason for not drilling down, because, well, the answer might not be what we want to hear, or it might not want to be what the people who are going to receive that data are going to want to know. Immaterial, when you're not gathering the data and you're not looking at the data and gathering it, it becomes useless. It's like buying a car and leaving it in the driveway. But you got to start off and start doing it properly. Meaningful data is necessary. Okay. And what I mean by meaningful, a lot of people will say, well, it's useless data. We don't need it. Like, I don't want to get it. But think about a few things. Like, more often than not, organizations have the data available, and either they collect everything or they don't. Or they only collect so much, and they don't look at it over a span of time, or it's not enough to interpret it, think sample size over a period. Many would argue that there's meaningless data. And that's what I'm getting to. There's no such thing as meaningless data. If you look at like the big tech empires, Facebook, Google, all of those guys, YouTube, their whole thing is collecting data because they want to be able to say, based on the data we've got, this is our predictive amount of viewers, etc. And you can do the same thing. Understanding that correlation is not necessarily causation. I posted a picture on one of my YouTube community posts a long time ago, and it had a picture of a bent tin roof and a cat sitting right at the valley, the peak of the valley. And apex, peak, whatever. They were sitting right down in the middle of the valley. And so obviously there's a cat sitting there. The roof is bent, but the cat didn't do it. So correlation is not causation. But it's okay to collect everything, but you need to make sure it's dependable and verifiable. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Same thing with corrupted data. It's useless. So once again, think about that data management. If you make sure that your data is not corrupted and pure, and it's dependable and verifiable, then it's not meaningless because you can use it. But the next thing you got to consider is, what are your data sources? Okay, where are you getting the data from? Because when you get right down to it, you have to remember one thing. Statistics without context are nothing more than a meaningless collection of numbers. That's the truth. Okay? We could collect all the stats in the world. And I'll stay tuned because I'm going to show you a few and how you can either make the stats say what you want, which, say our Liberal Party in Canada does that consistently, or you can interpret them wrongly or incorrectly if you're not considering context. Okay? And I'll give you some more examples as we move along. But first off, what are your primary safety data sources? And realistically, this is pretty simple. Drink here. Immediately, your primary sources are, you want to collect it off the safety activities that you're doing. So think incident investigations. Okay. So you want every piece of that information that's there. So one of the mistakes that people make is they'll make this long, endless form. So the incident report is not your investigation. Okay. Don't make it your investigation, but make it enough that you can understand how much you have to investigate and how much you have to look into. A majority of the data that you collect should be transferred to your incident report. To your investigation report. And there you want to collect all of the, and depending on how you do it, if you want to note your loss, your incident, your direct cause, your indirect cause, your root cause, causational factors, third stage, second stage, first stage causational factors, however you want to do it is fine, but you can list those things, and you can list a lot of other things that contribute to it, say state of equipment, working environments, etc. And that all helps you. Of course, like the next thing, of course, is your inspection results and reports. They're going to be just a treasure trove of data. Beyond that, of course, hazard assessments, whether they be the formal and hazard assessment, you might start and note it for every single position, whether you do a job specific or a pre-work hazard assessment, a situational or site specific hazard assessment, field level, whichever one you want to do. If you're keeping and retaining all of those, they will have good data on them. And they may even have good data where you're all of a sudden, and this may sound really weird, but give me some latitude here. You get a lot of crap in, but you have the same name each time giving you this garbage data. Well, look at that. So we either have one of two things. We have inadequate worker training on how to put together that hazard assessment, or we have non-compliance with the process. Go back and look at your training process and your direction and what you want. Because remember, if you want behavior from people, then you have to describe what that behavior is supposed to look like. You have to benchmark it yourself first. And if you've done that already, then it's non-compliance. So there you go. It may be garbage data, but look who's bringing you the data. And then you have good data. So look at your hazard assessment reports. And now this big one after that is equipment failure reports. And I'll tie some of this together with some examples in a bit. But then you can look at some secondary data sources that you have to consider as well. And one is maintenance reports. Okay, so let's say, and let's start building on this. Let's say that we have a hoist, whether it's a gantry lift or just a swinging derrick in a shop or whatever the case may be. And we've had some accidents with it. We've had a couple of close calls or near misses reported and so forth. But we can look back and we see that we're doing quarterly inspections on the shop. So once every 3 months, all of them are okay. And then we look and we clarify, but we notice that our maintenance reports are done after the inspection. Oh, so we don't really know, unless we're looking at those maintenance reports, what the problem was. And then if we look at the dates of the incidents and everything occurred, and we found that they're done in between the inspections and the maintenance reports. Oh, so what do we do here? So those are all lagging indicators. So what do we do here? Well, we could create some leading indicators. We can start inspecting more, maybe once a month. We can increase our maintenance process from quarterly to maybe monthly or bi-monthly. We can also look at pre-inspection reports for the equipment. So consider the preventive maintenance schedules in there as well. And how do they correlate with your losses? And then finally, once, of course, is OEM reports and alerts. They come out as well. I mean, just recently here in Canada, I forget what the number was worldwide, but here in Canada was 193 recall notices. Doesn't mean they're taking them back. It's just, here's a problem. And it was with Tesla's self-driving. Don't know that I could ever get in a vehicle going down the road at highway speeds and know that a computer's driving it. Just, I don't know, call me old-fashioned, just not the kind of guy. Sorry, Elon, just don't have confidence in the process. And I'm a nerd. And I think it was 1.3 million worldwide, and they had to have an over-the-air update. So it's like, update. And I don't know, just frightening. Anyway. But regardless, you need to put all of those together and consider all of those. And then when you're doing that, you want to build context. And so part of the problem is that people, and once again, statistics and numbers are just numbers without context, why it was going on. And, there'll be, and it's the first question I ask, workers' compensation spikes. My question is why? There's a spike in compensatable injuries. Okay, why? I don't know why people just, this is going to cost us more money. Well, rather than looking at it's going to cost you more money, find out why first. It's like, we've got a leak. Oh, okay, that's going to cost us more money. Hold on, find the leak and plug the hole. It just makes sense to me. I honestly don't understand it. Same things when you see things trending upward. Why? What is going on? What are the internal influences? What's happened? What's changed? And please, quit blaming COVID all the time. Yes, COVID did cause a lot. But it's not necessarily the be-all to end-all. It's like, we've got a villain. It's like some, the devil made me do it or whatever. You can't necessarily always blame COVID unless you've drilled down and that's what it is. So what are the new internal influences? What's happened? I can remember talking with a colleague, and this is some years ago, and he was the head of safety at a sawmill, a lumber manufacturing facility. And it was funny because he said, I don't know, we're going to do a mill expansion and we're going to look at hiring 120 people. And it was almost at the same time as we both said, well, your accident rates are going to go up and your workers' compensation rates are going to go up. And all of a sudden, their premiums skyrocketed. And for, I don't know how it is in different countries, of course, but what happens is you have like a 3-year trend. So you get a significant amount, or even it doesn't depending on the size of your company. It could just be one severe time loss injury. And all of a sudden you got a spike, and it's going to take 3 years of a surcharge before it starts going down. And so if in between that, you could go up again and it'll start to decrease, but you'll have constant hill, valley. Delays due to COVID. Sorry, Dan. But those were internal influences. Those were internal things. You had new workers coming online, training happening, larger organization. Same thing as with what was going on with SpaceX, an effort to try and boost production because we've been building, etc. And so internal influences. But now the next thing is, what about external influences? What's going on in the market? What's going on externally? Yes, COVID did cause a problem, but what are the external influences beyond that? Instead of just going, yep, it was COVID and blaming COVID right away, look more. And here's a little chart just to give you some thought here. Now, if you can see this, these are laboratory confirmed seasonal influenza cases in Alberta since 2009, 2010. And this is why I say, don't blame COVID. Because if you look, for when COVID was a big deal, there was like no flus. In fact, you had chief medical officers and medical gurus all over the world going, we've eradicated the flu. Did you? Really? That's why I say don't blame COVID. Because here's one from the WHO. And the person that put it together, just in it, virtually the same. This is worldwide, though. This is the world. So everything corresponded at the same time. Problem is that's what it was. We all blamed that common enemy, that devil we know, and really and truthfully, and then look at what the flu has done afterwards. So if we think about it, and we'll go back to the previous look at what it spiked hugely. And then here we are. Same thing worldwide. So watch what you're doing. Look for the context and understand. Now, correlation may not be the answer. Correlation may not be causation, but consider those external factors, or those factors, both internal and external, that's caused the safety data spikes and the safety data trending the way it is. I can't say it enough. Because here's another example. And this is why we have Bill C-21. And Dan, I know you guys are pretty much gunless in Australia, but firearms are firearms, and they're a thing that built both Canada and the U.S., more so the U.S. than Canada. But we still do a lot of hunting and everything else around here. And of course, here we have the homicide rate with a firearm per 100,000. And gangs where they're illegal, not necessarily unlicensed, but illegally obtained firearms, and 586 per 100,000. Then we have unlicensed Canadians, 1.8 per 100,000. And this is over the span of 9 years. And then 0.35, so 35 100ths are Canadians with licensed firearms. And yet guns are killing everybody. In fact, here's the thing in Canada. You have a greater statistical chance of dying by strangulation if you die from a violent act by strangulation versus being killed with a licensed firearm. Just a thought there. I know we don't have butter knife licenses. Like, it's literally, but here's the thing. More people in Canada, more people worldwide die by motor vehicle accidents. Are we going to ban cars? Like, it's just this nanny state idea. But once again, you are building statistics without context. You're not putting, and so what's happening is there's two things. There's intentional bias here. It's anchoring bias, and it's like, not anchoring bias, confirmation bias. We are only going to mold and publicize the data that meets our narrative, our desire to clear all of the guns out of Canada, and from licensed and responsible gun owners. Whereas the data doesn't show that. It doesn't reveal that whatsoever if it's applied with statistical probability and looked at and compiled properly and the context put behind it. So we can do the same thing as safety, but the problem is when we do that, then we want to meet our narrative or we want to meet the boss's narrative, we're going to do three things. We're going to damage our safety culture. We are going to put in place likely some very impractical and impracticable processes that either won't be followed, won't be needed, or will slow things down. And they'll be lost. There won't be any sustainability. And then, of course, the last thing is we're going to harm our own credibility because we've jeopardized our integrity. And there's absolutely no need to do it. And honestly, I've had it, like I've turned in reports and people have said to me, well, that's not what I thought and that's not what I wanted to see. Now you know what you don't want. Now you know what it's like to want. I honestly don't care. This is what the numbers say. It even got me into trouble once. But it's what the numbers say. And when you put together those numbers, they don't lie. Because really and truthfully, like I've said before, I wanted to borrow something from a conservative commentator I know. I don't know personally, but I follow. Facts don't care about your feelings. And the numbers, when they're put down properly, honestly don't care either. They don't have the feelings. And so now, like I said, Christmas time, it was going to be short. I don't even know how long I've been streaming. Let's have a look here. I don't even see the clock. That's weird. Okay. Oh, well, I'm just assuming I've been streaming for a while. Oh, well, there's the clock, 7:37. So I have been talking for a while. But if you have any questions, by all means, ask them. I only had one that popped up recently, and that is CORE, the certificate of recognition necessary. Do we need to achieve CORE to have a well-functioning safety system and safety culture? Honestly, the certificate of recognition, or if you have equivalents in in Australia, Dan, the idea behind it is there a confirmation that you're using best practices and you have 10 well-functioning elements of a safety management system, depending where you are. Some are 8, some are 12. But do you have that? And is this verifiable? And in fact, depending on what you're doing, let's look at just the intrinsic benefits before we look at the, I guess getting money back is intrinsic too. But when you're doing that, it's all of a sudden there's a huge heightened awareness. More people know that you're working on this certificate of recognition. They know because they're getting interviewed. They see strangers doing observation tours. They're ISOs, okay, yeah. They're having to give up documentation, et cetera. So they know that there's an audit going on. So it increases awareness. Usually organizations are prepping for it. So their safety broadcasts and communications are becoming more frequent. Anybody that's involved with safety, like the health and safety committees, they're more visible doing inspections and so forth. So it increases awareness. And if safety awareness is increased, then that means it's on people's radar. And people are thinking about it. And so if people are thinking about safety, then they're generally, I better put on my PPE. I better put on my safety glasses, my hard hat, my vest. Steel-toe boots are in order. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put in my boot receipt so I can get reimbursed. Whatever the case may be, people will start thinking about it. It's almost like, tax season's approaching. Have I got my RSP contributions in? Have I done this? Have I done that? And it becomes really in the forefront of people's minds. Now, the other thing is when you're doing these things and doing all of the core activities, then guess what? You're doing safety activities. When you're making sure, we haven't done enough inspections, let's do some inspections. We haven't been compiling our hazard reports, let's do that. Our investigation reports aren't really that good, let's fix them up. So you start performing those safety activities. And then the buy-in, of course, by everybody above is we get a rebate on our workers' compensation insurance premiums. So, and in some cases, like here in Alberta, for the first-time core holder, they can get up to a 20% rebate. And depending, if you're paying $2.50 per $100 of payroll for every worker, you start doing the math. Think about that. And then you pay all of that, and then all of a sudden you get 20% of what you've paid back. Interesting thought. And then after that, they usually get around 5% a year. Now, depending on where you are, depending on how large your organization is, I know organizations that means like it's like 50 grand. So not numbers to sneeze at, not something to just poo-poo. So does it do things for your safety culture? By all means. Is it a lot of work? Yes, it is. Does it help you in your safety management system? Honestly, if it does. And in fact, there's facts and figures. Now, will it reduce injuries? I can't say that for sure. I don't know that. In most cases, it does, but there's been lots of times it hasn't. So is it valuable? By all means, it is. And so honestly, that was the only question that somebody fired off my way, and that's it. And to be understandable, honestly, we have visions of sugar plums dancing on our heads. The stockings are hung by the chimney with whatever. I don't know the whole poem, but honestly, we're thinking more, our minds are more about Christmas and so forth, and I understand that. So I was just glad I had a question. I was glad I had another, well, the first part was due to a much longer question I had. Oh, hi, Kelly. Just catching me. Sorry, you can watch the rest of it later, but hey, glad you showed up and glad you could make it. Not showed up. Sorry, that didn't sound right. We were talking about safety data. But honestly, getting back to certificate of recognition and working towards it, bringing safety awareness is huge. And often just doing it alone helps to deal with apathy in a safety culture, because all of a sudden it's, we're doing something else. And of course, people will always ask, what's in it for me? But, look at you. Well, good stuff. I'd be interested on what certificate of recognition is like in New Brunswick. Interesting. But CORE is a valuable thing, and it does do a lot for safety culture and safety awareness. And like I said, if you're testing your safety management system, it's only going to get better. Now, the few things that do negatively affect it, you have, say, for instance, change in leadership, and you had very pro-safety and proactive leadership, and then all of a sudden they retired, moved on, got promoted, whatever the case may be, and then things happen. But once again, you can usually see that with that correlation in your data. And I've actually seen it where you see an organization and they're moving up like this, and then all of a sudden, this point here, that leader that was driving everything leaves. And then all of a sudden things start to go down like this shortly afterwards. And I've seen it before. And that's why I say, I can remember when I took a position with a different organization, and they had lots of different safety committees, and they had one person was in charge of each division, and they called it a core champion of getting everything prepped. And it was killing these people. And just because the extra work on top of their normal job. And it also wasn't sustainable, because partly through the people would move on, leave, quit, get fired, whatever the case may be. And so it was like this roller coaster of insanity. And so finally I said to my team, and I said to all of the groups, we're going to make this the business of the health and safety committees of each division. That's what we're going to do. That is their business to get going. And then whatever admin help they have, bonus. That's what they can use. And all of a sudden, everything started to go up. There was like the records were being kept properly, and it was going on. Because the other thing is, you have to look at it this way. If you're in a jurisdiction that has a legal requirement for you to have a health and safety committee, you've got bonus sustainability right there. Because if it's written into the terms of reference and the duties of the committee that that's one of the things they have to do, you've got sustainability because you've got a legally required entity now, and then they have that job put upon them as a reasonable duty to do. You have sustainability. If you're not legally required to have a safety committee, but you all of a sudden want to be judged on your best practices, then have a safety committee and then have it written into their terms of reference that this is what they do. This is how you can make certain things. And where I see organizations fail in health and safety is safety becomes one person's job. Oh, okay. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks. Yeah. I did mine through BCIT because the U of Fred, I was partway through my certificate program and the U Fred came online. So I didn't bother switching. I just finished off with BCIT. But I've worked with a couple of safety professionals that use them and that have gone through their programs and very good from their endorsements. So yeah, cool. Thanks, Kelly. But once again, the more you use your safety committees, and I'm thinking also, and once again, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? And would you be interested in seeing it? If rather than that set of videos I did, once I got the hazard assessment ones over with, maybe worked on a safety committee one, where it was a series of live streams and then condensed videos afterwards of safety committee training and working all the way through, embracing best practices, not just what's legally required in one jurisdiction in Canada, but following a best practice process. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, do you think that would be a good thing? I don't know. Just a thought. Just me. Anyway, any other questions, thoughts, or anything? Because, yeah. I want to take the time. Ooh, I have, yeah, that's right too. One other thing. Just as a reminder, what's going to come up next when we're doing this, moving on in the series. Or both. Well, I'm going to do the hazard assessment one. I think starting the 21st of January is when I have my first one booked in my head to come out, Leo. Kelly, sorry. And then after that, after I'm done it and wrapped up, I might look at doing the safety committee one. And then I think I'll look at just foundational health and safety if we want to talk about courses. One on incident investigation. Yeah, I've done a lot of videos on it, but maybe it's time to do some live stream classes on it. And incident investigation, and then maybe workplace inspections as well, and then see where we go from there. It's not that health and safety is a dying thing, but I've got like over 220 videos I've done. So, and honestly, some of them are really doing well. Some of them are pretty boring. So you want to make sure that everybody's pleased in what you're delivering and everybody finds it value in it. I mean, if just 2 or 3 people do, okay, fine. But I would prefer more. Oh, thanks. Glad. So, once again, I want to take the time to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. I'm late for Hanukkah, so I'll just wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I'm not a Happy Holidays person. I'm a Merry Christmas person, so hopefully everybody's okay with that. I'm too old to change, so I'm going to go with that. And yeah, take care. Do me a favor. Please do me this favor. Do not allow yourself to creep into depression or get stressed out or anxious. There will be a 1-800 number or a toll-free number, and you can even dial 988 in Canada now if you're feeling any kinds of those ideations or stress or issues or anything else like that. Thanks, Dan. Merry Christmas to you too. I don't want you to be overwrought with emotion, okay? This is the season for joy and peace and comfort. And so for heaven's sake, don't allow that to happen. Reach out. If you have to, leave a comment to me in one of my channels, because God bless you too, Kelly, by all means. But even leave a comment and I'll figure out some way to get online or chat with you or whatever the case may be, because I don't want anybody to go through that. Okay? So have a very Merry Christmas. Peace and joy to each and every one of you. And like I said, leave me comments. Okay? I appreciate them all the time. And so, yeah, take care. And bye for now.